Morning. Welcome to the live for this week in the Emotionally Healthy Moms Club. I am Makove. I am the host of this community, and it's a place I want you to feel safe as a mom to share where you're struggling, where you're winning, where you can celebrate. And this month we're talking about nurturing, and we talked about nurturing your spirit. We talked last week about nurturing your body, and today we're talking about nurturing your soul. And I always feel like it's important to define what we're talking about before we start a conversation, because the same words don't mean the same thing to everybody. So, and even in the same context or in different contexts, to frame it for this conversation, when we're talking about nurturing, we're talking about giving something what it needs to thrive. So if we're going to nurture our kids, we're giving them food, structure, sleep, emotional support, like all these different things that they need to thrive. If I am nurturing my microgreens, I'm giving them light and water and air and the things that they need to survive or to thrive. I don't want them to just survive. I want them to thrive. And so, what are the things that we need for our soul to thrive? Which brings us to the next thing that we need to frame, which is, what is your soul? Because it's a word that gets thrown around a lot and doesn't always get defined. I was reading some articles, getting ideas for this video, and I don't think it was from a Christian perspective, but she was using soul and spirit interchangeably, and they're not the same. So, what's the difference? So, I heard it said, we are a spirit, we have a soul, and live in a body. And I'm not sure that's entirely accurate. I think we are spirit and soul. I think our souls are eternal. That's why there's the concern of being born again, because your soul, or I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have said it that way. Obviously, I am not quite clear if your soul is eternal or if only your spirit is eternal. Your spirit is reborn, and I know for sure your spirit is eternal, but your soul, I think, is also eternal because it's who you are. It's your personality. It's your, say mind, will, and emotions. It's the things that make you you. And your spirit is part of that. So again, I can see why they get used interchangeably. And obviously, didn't set itself up for a very clear distinction, but how we're using it for this conversation is, it's the part of you that's your personality, your things that you like and don't like, the way, just the way you function. Are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? Are you, yeah, I just keep thinking like the things that make you you, your mind, the things you think, your will, the things that you choose to do, want to do, and your emotions are all part of your soul. And many times in the Bible, when it's talking about living from your heart, it is talking about the soul, because, well, they talk about the heart and the bowels, which they saw as the seat of emotions. So that's your soul, which is interesting because how often we talk about having a gut feeling. That's where emotions are seated, is largely in our gut. And they've even, like, health wise, they're showing that connection between emotions and gut health. So emotions are a big part of your soul, and nurturing you intellectually, emotionally. What are things that you need to do to nurture your soul? And as I was thinking about like what to teach and explain, and obviously I didn't start off very well with all the confusion about soul and spirit, but this idea of nurturing our emotions, if we've been taught to ignore them, especially particular emotions, ignore those because they're not good. I just thought I'll just share something from where I'm at in my life right now. Um, I've always, I don't know, always. I recognized when my kids were young that it was very stressful for me, like extremely anxiety producing to have an appointment somewhere later in the day and I need to go run errands beforehand. Um, and I was thinking about it this morning, like, why was that? And obviously I've thought about it before because it was so anxiety producing for so long. And all I can come up with this morning is just that extreme fear of disappointing someone, letting somebody down. I don't want to be late for something that's a huge no. And I don't like, I do value people's time and I want to honor them in that way, but I don't know why it was so anxiety producing instead of just being able to sometimes be like, yeah, it didn't go as planned. I ran late. Um, but so I was recognizing that anxiety coming up for today because I'm doing this live and then I need to take my daughter and drop her off at a friend's house. And then I need to be at an appointment with my inner healing coach. Um, and so I could feel this anxiety and nowhere near to the level that it used to be, thankfully, but I could still feel it there. And it was like, no, like, figure it out. Just figure out how much time it takes and add 10 minutes or a half hour or whatever I feel like I need to add. And like, it's okay. But I still like feeling that. I'm like, why? And then I realized it's because my son comes home today. He actually got in last night, but I get to see him today. Um, so he worked for 4 weeks. He was home for a week, I guess. Got to see him a few times. Then he was gone for 2 weeks. Now he's home for a day and he goes out for 4 weeks of work again. And I didn't know yet this morning when I was feeling this anxiousness when I was going to get to see him. So it's like, this is his only day. And I went and scheduled it full because I didn't know it was going to be his only day. He was supposed to be back to work already, but things changed. And so it was like, oh, it's that I might miss him. And now I know that I'm not going to miss him. He's going to be up this evening, which is sort of what I figured would happen, but like I didn't know. And there was that. So the nurturing part of that is being curious and allowing space for that of, well, why am I feeling this? Instead of stop it. Stop it. There's no reason for you to feel that. Stop it. Well, there is a reason because I wouldn't be feeling it if there wasn't a reason. That reason might not be good. It might not be valid. It might come from, you know, some wrong perspective or whatever, but it's still there for a reason. And in listening to it, I can nurture my soul and be like, oh, okay, I see what you need. You were concerned you weren't going to see your son and you miss him. So that's valid to be anxious or sad or concerned that you were going to miss that. So opening up the space for what you feel and opening up the space to be curious about why you feel it. And then that gives you the wisdom to decide what to do. And it's not, I'm feeling angry, so I get to go be mean to people. No, I'm feeling angry. Why am I feeling angry? What is it that I really need? And discovering, is there something I need to communicate? Was there a boundary that was crossed? Did I have a completely unrealistic expectation and I need to repent? So it's giving you the information to make a good choice. It's not living by your emotions, it's having your emotions inform you of what's going on and what you need so you can make a good choice so that you can nurture that. And another interesting thing, my husband and I have been doing these conversation prompts as just a way to be intentional in having conversation and practicing um, a very structured conversation to get better at active listening, um, because neither of us learned that. And just, I don't know, the season we've been in, it was like, we need some structure to really be intentional about how do I know that I'm understanding you? And how do you know that you're understanding me? And so we've been practicing and following this structure. And last night's conversation starter was, um, I felt hurt or disappointed as a child when blank, and this is how I dealt with it. And it just struck me as so strange because I was like, I cried a lot as a kid. I cry a lot as an adult. Um, and I was always trying to hide that I was crying because that wasn't a good thing. Stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about, or turn that frown upside down, or I will like physically turn you upside down. And I don't remember if that ever actually, I think it did happen where like I'm crying and sad or hurt or whatever. And instead of finding out what that was about, if I couldn't smile fast enough, then I would get flipped upside down. Um, but so I was like thinking about this and I'm like, things that hurt. Like I cried all the time. So I would think that like I must have been hurting, but realizing that wasn't a word that was okay to use. And it just really, it hit me so strange that like some memories came up of things that I was mad about or disappointed. Disappointment is a big thing for me. I didn't know how to deal with disappointment as a kid. I still struggle to deal with disappointment because that part's still healing. And but I was just like these things were coming up that I was mad about. Like, well, I was actually hurt, but I was this old, like 48 years old, before I really connected with like, oh, that little girl was hurt. She wasn't just she wasn't just mad, she wasn't just disappointed. And I don't know, it was healing to be able to sit there with my husband and be like, that hurt. And it hurt that I wasn't allowed to say that it hurt because it wasn't okay to be hurt. You're okay. You're okay. And so he was like, well, like you weren't allowed to emotionally hurt or physically hurt. And I'm like, either one. Like we could be physically hurt, but it had to be like serious. Like it needed to be a major gash or, I'd say bone sticking out, but none of us ever broke any bones, thankfully. Um, so like it had to be a big thing to even be hurt physically. And then even if it was like we didn't have any major things. So even if it was something physically painful, be like, but you're okay and move on. And then emotionally was even more so of like just to express being hurt. Like never entered my mind and didn't occur to me, like I said, until this conversation last night, that it wasn't okay. Like I knew that, but I didn't emotionally experience that until the conversation last night, that it wasn't okay to say that hurt me. The way you talked to me, the way you didn't believe what I said. Um, and just kind of sitting in that and thinking about like, wow, that like I'm just gonna sit here and let that hurt because like that hurt. And I've never done that before. And my husband was asking about, or I guess in like his reframing and feeding it back to me is like, so like you weren't allowed to have your own emotions. And then I started crying even more because I'm like, well, it wasn't just that. Like it wasn't even that I couldn't have my own emotions. I couldn't have my own experience because that didn't hurt or that didn't really disappoint, like being told that didn't hurt, you're okay, or expressing I didn't want to spend time with a certain person. Yes, you do. You like them. Just like little things like that where like I wasn't even allowed to have my own reality. And that hurts. And so now as me, 48 years old, I can say, yes, that hurt and that wasn't okay. And I see you and I validate that, yeah, that hurt. That's hard. Let's not do that anymore. And so that's kind of what I wanted. I was going to go a different direction of like, there's all kinds of things you can do to nurture your soul. You can do things you like, get outside, read a book, paint a picture, get together with friends. And it's true, all of those things nurture your soul. Um, if you grew up with childhood emotional neglect, which I did, then those things often aren't enough. I guess I was going to say they miss it, but they're not missing it. You might not know how to receive the goodness that they're giving you, though, because if it's not okay to express that you're hurt, then you're not going to be comforted because you're not even admitting to yourself that you need comfort. So start with nurturing yourself. Pay attention to what you are feeling and what you like and what you don't like. And you literally can make an exercise, a habit out of this of write down 3 things every day that you like and 3 things every day that you don't like. And they, could have happened that day, or it could just be like, well, yeah, I've never liked butterscotch. Does that seem like a big thing? No. But if you feel like you don't know who you are, that's a great place to start. And then you can look at, what are 3 things I felt today? And if you have a hard time connecting with how you feel now, or a hard time connecting with more than 1 or 2 emotions, because like telling my husband, like, it wasn't okay to be hurt. We could be mad, kind of. As I'm like, I look back at all these memories and I think I was mad. So that was somehow acceptable, but I still, like, I couldn't show I was mad. That wasn't okay because I needed to be happy and needed to be smiling. Um, or we'll turn that frown upside down. Um, so like that was it, happy or mad. Those were the 2 emotions. Um, so if you have a hard time connecting with more than that, maybe look back at some of those memories because there's some distance there. So it's easier to look at that as maybe a different person experiencing that and imagine what they were feeling or remember what you were feeling and be able to be like, oh, it makes sense that you would feel that way. And that is healing. Just simply saying that I believe you. There's a reason you felt that way. And you can do that for yourself, whether it's an old emotion from something that happened in the past, or whether something right now that you can be like, oh, I see you're feeling this and it makes sense to me. I understand. And not like, I agree with you, and like, not, it doesn't have to be that. It can, if you'd be like, yep, that's exactly how I would feel. But that actually, it isn't needed to be healing. Just saying it makes sense that you feel that way. That is a legitimate thing to feel, is healing. And then once you listen, then like I said, it can help you make better choices, because if you try and pretend like you're not hurt or you're not angry or you're not disappointed, those emotions are still there screaming for attention, and they will make you do things you don't really want to be doing. But it's when you bring them close to be like, what are you trying to tell me? What do I need to hear from you? So my anxiety, the yesterday and today, that I finally was able to connect this morning of like, oh, you're trying to tell me that I'm afraid of missing my son. Yes, I definitely am. I don't get to see him enough. I don't get enough time with him. And that's legitimate. So then, like, okay, that's what it is. Here's what I can do about it. And like, the anxiety is now gone. The anxiety was kind of the cover emotion to be like, oh no, there's this longing there and a disappointment that I'll only get this much time, but still being way emotional. Um, a really deep gratitude that he at almost 23 years old, prioritizes time with us. And he is making time for us on his one day off before he goes back to work. So listening to those emotions helps you direct, what do you want to do? What do you need? So I kind of, I don't know, covered a lot of things. If it raised questions for you, leave them. Next week is a Q&A video. So um, any questions about anything really, but questions that came up from this month's videos about nurturing your spirit, your body, your soul, um, how to truly nurture your emotions and have them be a blessing to you instead of maybe what you've grown up feeling like they were just kind of a torment and a burden. Um, let me know, and I will see you in the group.